They looked at his hoodie and saw a thug. They looked at his skin and saw a threat. When the flight attendant sneered, "This cabin is for elite passengers only," she had no idea she was speaking to the man who signed her paychecks. Adrian Banks didn't scream. He didn't fight. He simply walked to the back of the plane and sent a single text message. 30 minutes later, the engines shut down, the airport locked down, and the arrogant billionaire in seat 1A realized he had made the most expensive mistake of his life. Because you never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book owns the library. The automatic doors of JFK's Terminal 4 slid open with a soft hiss, admitting a gust of chilly November wind, and a man who looked like he belonged anywhere but the first-class check-in line. Adrian Banks adjusted the strap of his worn leather duffel bag. He wore a charcoal grey hoodie, simple black joggers, and a pair of vintage sneakers that had seen better days. To the untrained eye, he looked like a tired college student, or perhaps an off-duty mechanic. To the trained eye, specifically an eye that understood the subtle weave of vicuña wool and the limited edition stitching of rare streetwear, he was walking money. But the staff at Vista Air were not trained to look for subtleties. They were trained to process cattle, and today the herd was thick. Adrian approached the counter marked First Class. Priority access. The carpet here was plush, the ropes were velvet, and the air smelled faintly of lavender. Behind the podium stood a man named Gary. Gary had a name tag that was slightly crooked and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was busy typing furiously on his keyboard, ignoring the person standing directly in front of him. Adrian waited patiently. 10 seconds. 20. 30. "Excuse me," Adrian said, his voice a deep, calm baritone. "I'm checking in for Flight 802 to London." Gary didn't look up. He held up a finger, a universal gesture of "wait your turn," despite the fact that there was no one else in the line. He tapped a few more keys, sighed dramatically, and finally lifted his gaze. His eyes did a quick sweep of Adrian's attire, hoodie, joggers, duffel bag. And the customer service smile vanished instantly. "Sir, you're in the wrong line," Gary said, his tone dripping with a sugary condescension that was far more insulting than shouting. "Economy check-in is around the corner past the restrooms. The kiosks are self-serve." "I know where economy is," Adrian said, resting his hand on the counter. "I'm in the right place. I'm flying first." Gary let out a short, incredulous laugh. He looked around as if checking for a hidden camera. "Sir, this line is for priority passengers. Unless you have a platinum card or a first-class confirmation, I need to ask you to step aside. We have actual VIPs arriving any minute." Adrian didn't blink. He reached into his pocket. Gary flinched slightly as if expecting a weapon, but Adrian only produced a sleek black passport and slid it across the marble counter. "Adrian Banks," he said. "Seat 1A." Gary stared at the passport as if it were a dirty napkin. He picked it up with 2 fingers, flipping it open with exaggerated slowness. He typed the name into the system, his eyebrows raised fully, expecting the computer to reject it. Click. Clack. Enter. Gary's face froze. The screen flashed green. "Passenger status VIP. Do not offend." It was the highest clearance level in the Vista Air system. It was a code usually reserved for A-list celebrities, diplomats or members of the board. Gary blinked. He looked at the screen, then back at the man in the hoodie. The cognitive dissonance was short-circuiting his brain. This man couldn't be a VIP. He didn't look like a VIP. There must be a system error. I see the reservation. Gary stammered, his arrogance faltering but not disappearing. He handed the passport back, his suspicion still evident. The system says you're in 1A. That's the bulkhead suite. Is there a problem? Adrian asked. No. No problem, Gary said stiffly. He printed the boarding pass and slapped it onto the counter, not bothering to hand it to Adrian directly. Gate B12. Boarding in 40 minutes. Do try to look presentable before you board, Mr. Banks. We have a dress code standard for the lounge. Adrian took the pass. He noticed the slight was unnecessary, petty, and entirely expected. I'll keep that in mind, Gary, he said softly. You have a good day. Adrian walked away, leaving Gary muttering under his breath about system glitches and affirmative action upgrades. Adrian didn't let it sting. He couldn't afford to. Today wasn't just a flight to London, it was a stealth mission. Adrian Banks was the founder and CEO of Nexus Logistics, a software giant that had quietly revolutionized global shipping. But more importantly, Nexus was in the final stages of a hostile takeover of Vista Air's parent company. The airline was failing. Customer satisfaction was at an all-time low. Profits were bleeding, and the board was corrupt. Adrian was flying to London to sign the final acquisition papers with the European regulators. Technically, as of tomorrow morning, he would own every plane, every kiosk, and every headset in the fleet. But for now, he was just a passenger in a hoodie. He wanted to see how his future employees treated the common man. He had no idea he was about to get a front-row seat to the Orot at the heart of the company. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 777 was a sanctuary of beige leather and walnut trim. Soft jazz played over the speakers. Adrian settled into Seat 1A, a spacious suite with a sliding privacy door. He placed his duffel bag in the overhead bin and sat down, declining the pre-flight champagne offered by a flight attendant who looked at him with barely concealed suspicion. Her name tag read Tiffany. She was tall, blonde, and wore her uniform like a suit of armor. She had smiled brightly at the elderly couple in 2A and 2B, but when she turned to Adrian, her face went flat. "Sir, I need you to keep your bag entirely under the seat, if it's not in the bin," she said sharply. "It's in the bin," Adrian replied, buckling his belt. "Well, make sure it fits. We don't want to delay departure because of luggage issues," she snapped before spinning on her heel. Adrian pulled out his tablet. He began reviewing the merger contracts. He was engrossed in paragraph 14, subsection C regarding employee retention, when a commotion at the front of the plane broke his concentration. "I don't care what the computer says. I always sit in 1A. It's my seat." The voice was loud, brash, and dripping with entitlement. Adrian looked up to see a man storming into the cabin. He was in his mid-40s, wearing a navy blue bespoke suit that probably cost more than a Honda Civic. He had slicked back hair and a face flushed red with anger. Trailing behind him was a nervous-looking personal assistant carrying a garment bag and a Louis Vuitton dog carrier. This was Preston Gentry. Adrian recognized him instantly. Preston was a real estate mogul famous for two things: inheriting his father's empire and being sued for discrimination by 3 different housing boards. He was a regular on the tabloids, usually seen screaming at valets or dating women half his age. Preston stopped in the aisle, staring at Adrian. The silence that followed was heavy and cold. Preston turned to Tiffany, who had rushed over. "What is this?" Preston pointed a manicured finger at Adrian. "Gentry, welcome aboard," Tiffany said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and admiration. "Is there a problem?" "The problem," Preston spat, is that there is someone in my seat. I specifically requested the bulkhead suite. I need the legroom for my meetings. Get him out." Tiffany looked at her manifest. "Mr. Gentry, you're assigned to seat 3A today. It's a lovely window seat, just 2 rows back." "I don't sit in row 3, Preston shouted, causing the elderly couple in row 2 to jump. "I'm a Platinum Legacy member. My family has been flying this airline since it was founded. I want 1A. Now." Preston leaned over Adrian, invading his personal space. He smelled of expensive scotch and aggression. "Hey, buddy, you're in the wrong seat. Move." Adrian calmly locked his tablet screen. He looked up, meeting Preston's gaze with steady dark eyes. "I have a ticket for this seat. 1A, I'm not moving." Preston laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Ticket you probably got upgraded on miles or some charity lottery. Look at you. You look like you're here to fix the Wi-Fi, not fly first class." He turned to Tiffany. "Honey, do your job. This man is clearly out of place. He's making me uncomfortable. I want him moved to economy. Or better yet, get him off my flight." Tiffany hesitated. She looked at Adrian, then at Preston. It was a calculation of power. On one side, a loud, wealthy, frequent flyer who could get her fired with a phone call. On the other, a quiet black man in a hoodie who in her mind didn't fit the profile of a premium passenger. The training manual said to de-escalate. But the culture of Vista Air said money talks. Tiffany squared her shoulders. She turned to Adrian, her expression hardening. "Sir," she said, her voice icy, "I'm afraid there has been a mistake with the booking system. Mr. Gentry is a priority legacy holder. We need to accommodate him in this suite." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "I paid full fare for this ticket. There is no mistake." "We are overbooked in first," Tiffany lied. She didn't even blink. "I can offer you a seat in premium economy. We will refund the difference in voucher credits." "You're downgrading me?" Adrian asked, his voice dangerously low. "Because he wants my seat." "It's an operational necessity," Tiffany insisted. "If you don't cooperate, I'll have to designate you as a disruptive passenger, and that means you won't be flying at all." Preston smirked, crossing his arms. "You heard the lady. Move it, hoodie. The back of the bus is that way." The cabin was silent. Every eye in first class was fixed on seat 1A. The elderly woman in 2B looked horrified, whispering to her husband, but neither of them spoke up. This was the bystander effect in full swing. No one wanted to draw the ire of Preston Gentry or the airline staff. Adrian looked at Tiffany. He saw the defiance in her eyes. She had made her choice. She had picked the shiny suit over the hoodie. She had picked the bully over the rules. "Are you sure you want to do this, Tiffany?" Adrian asked. He used her name intentionally. "Once I leave this seat, there is no going back." "I'm asking you to vacate the seat, sir," she said, her hand drifting toward the intercom phone on the wall. "Do not make me call the captain." Adrian nodded slowly. He understood the dynamics here perfectly. If he argued, if he raised his voice even a decibel, he would be the angry black man. Security would be called. He would be dragged off in handcuffs. The video would go viral, but the narrative would be spun against him. He had to play the long game. "Fine," Adrian said. He stood up. He grabbed his duffel bag from the overhead bin. "Finally," Preston sneered, brushing past Adrian to claim the seat before it was even empty. He threw his garment bag onto the seat Adrian had just vacated. "Wipe it down, will you?" he barked at Tiffany. "God knows where he's been." Adrian stood in the aisle. He towered over Preston, and for a split second Preston flinched, expecting a punch, but Adrian just smiled, a cold, terrifying smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Enjoy the flight, Mr. Gentry," Adrian said. "I have a feeling it's going to be a memorable one." Adrian turned and began the long walk back. He passed through the curtain separating first from business, then the curtain separating business from economy. The air quality seemed to change, becoming stuffier. The seats grew smaller. He found his new seat, 34E, a middle seat in the center of the plane. He squeezed in between an exhausted mother holding a crying baby and a teenager with oversized headphones. The legroom was non-existent. The seat did not recline. The mother looked at him apologetically as the baby kicked Adrian's thigh. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It's okay," Adrian said gently. "Don't worry about it." He sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the aircraft. He could feel the vibration of the engines preparing for pushback. Up in 1A, Preston Gentry was likely sipping champagne, laughing about how he had put the riff-raff in their place. Tiffany was likely congratulating herself on handling a difficult situation. Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He didn't open social media. He didn't call a lawyer. He opened a secure app marked with a blue icon, Nexus Admin. He typed in his biometric key. The screen flooded with data. Live logistics tracking, global fleet management. And thanks to the preliminary merger data sharing agreement, signed 48 hours ago, full back-end access to Vista Air's scheduling grid. Technically, the merger wasn't public yet, but the systems were bridged. Adrian had route access. He navigated to the flight manifest for Flight 802. Status pre-flight check. Pilot CPT, Richard Davis. Load 98%. Adrian tapped on the cargo manifest. He tapped on the crew roster. And then he tapped on a specific command line, usually reserved for emergency ground stops, initiated by corporate headquarters. He typed a message to his Chief Operating Officer, Sarah, who was currently in London waiting for his arrival. Text. Initiate Protocol 7. Immediate audit of Flight 802. Ground the bird. Revoke flight clearance for non-compliance with Safety Regulation 14B. Sarah's reply came 3 seconds later. Reply. On it. Are you safe? Text. I'm in 34E. Let the show begin. Adrian locked his phone and put it away. He leaned back against the hard foam of the economy seat and closed his eyes. Up in the cockpit, Captain Richard Davis was just releasing the parking brake when a red light flashed on his dashboard. The master caution alarm began to wail. Whoop, whoop. What the hell? The co-pilot muttered. The main communications screen in the cockpit went black, then rebooted with a single message in bold red text. Authorization revoked. Return to gate immediately. Corporate override. The plane lurched as the captain slammed on the brakes. In seat 1A, Preston Gentry spilled his champagne all over his expensive suit. The chaos had begun. The Boeing 707 didn't just stop. It shuddered as if it had hit an invisible wall. The sudden braking threw carry-on bags against the bulkhead walls. In the rear of the plane, a few passengers screamed. In seat 34E, Adrian Banks calmly placed a hand on the seat back in front of him to brace himself, then instinctively reached out to steady the young mother beside him, who was clutching her wailing infant. It's all right, Adrian said, his voice steady amidst the rising murmur of panic. Just a rejected takeoff. We're safe. Up in the cockpit, the atmosphere was far from calm. Captain Davis was staring at his instruments in disbelief. The throttle controls were locked out. The flight management system, was flashing a code he hadn't seen in 20 years of flying. Code read manifest mismatch, identity fraud detected. Tower, this is flight 802. Davis barked into his headset. We have a total system lockout. The computer is forcing us back to the gate. What is going on? Flight 802 Tower. The controller's voice crackled, sounding confused. We didn't issue a stop order. We're seeing a level 5 security hold initiated by corporate headquarters. You are ordered to return to Gate B12 immediately for federal inspection. Federal inspection? The co-pilot looked pale. Did we miss a checklist? No, Davis muttered, spinning the nose wheel to turn the massive jet around. Someone in the back triggered a tripwire. Back in the first-class cabin, the scene was one of wet wool and dry rage. Preston Gentry was standing up, dabbing furiously at his champagne-soaked trousers with a linen napkin. Unbelievable, he shouted, his face turning a shade of purple that clashed with the cabin lighting. First you let riffraff in here, and now you have a pilot who doesn't know how to drive. I will have this entire crew fired. Tiffany rushed over, her face pale. Mr. Gentry, please sit down. The seatbelt sign is still on. I don't care about the sign, Preston yelled. Why are we turning around? I have a meeting in London at 8:00 a.m. If this plane doesn't take off in 5 minutes, I'm suing this airline for every penny it has. The intercom chimed. The captain's voice filled the cabin, strained and serious. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We have been ordered by ground control to return to the gate due to a administrative security discrepancy regarding the passenger manifest. We have been instructed that no one is to leave their seats. Authorities will be meeting the aircraft. We apologize for the delay. Security discrepancy. Preston scoffed, dropping into his seat. Probably found a terrorist in economy. Figures. He glanced back toward the curtain, sneering. Probably that hoodie guy. Knew he was trouble the second I saw him. Tiffany nodded nervously, eager to agree with her VIP. You're probably right, Mr. Gentry. He was very resistant when I asked him to move. He might be on a watch list. The plane docked at Gate B12 with a heavy thud. The jet bridge began to extend. Usually, when a plane returns to the gate, there is a delay while the crew opens the door. Not this time. The door was opened from the outside almost instantly. 3 figures marched onto the plane. Leading them was a woman with razor-sharp features wearing a black pantsuit that looked strictly business. This was Sarah Jenkins, the COO of Nexus Logistics, who had just landed from a private charter an hour ago and was supposed to meet Adrian in London. But when the Protocol 7 alert hit her phone, she had activated the emergency contingency. Flanking her were 2 large men in dark tactical uniforms, with TSA special security patches on their shoulders, alongside the airport police chief, a weary-looking man named Chief O'Malley. Tiffany stepped forward, trying to regain control. Excuse me, you can't just barge in here. We have VIPs. Sarah didn't even look at her. She walked straight past Tiffany, her heels clicking ominously on the floor. She stopped in the middle of the first-class aisle and scanned the cabin. Her eyes landed on seat 1A. Who is this? Sarah asked, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. She pointed a manicured finger at Preston Gentry. Preston bristled. Excuse me. Who am I? Who the hell are you? I am Preston Gentry, and I demand to know why my flight is delayed. Sarah ignored him. She turned to Tiffany. The manifest for this flight lists the occupant of seat 1A as Adrian Banks. Why is this man sitting here? Tiffany swallowed hard. The air suddenly felt very thin. Well, there was a double booking issue. Mr. Gentry is a Platinum Legacy member, so we made an operational adjustment." "An operational adjustment?" Sarah repeated flatly. "You moved the passenger confirmed for 1A." "Yes," Tiffany said, her voice wavering. He didn't fit the profile of the cabin. We moved him to economy to accommodate Mr. Gentry." Sarah turned to Chief O'Malley. "There it is, Chief. Confirmation of identity fraud and tampering with a federal flight manifest. This airline has knowingly moved a high-security clearance individual from his assigned protective seat without authorization, creating a vulnerability." Preston laughed. "Security clearance. High value. The guy in the hoodie, you've got to be joking. He looked like he steals car radios." Sarah slowly turned her head to look at Preston. Her expression was one of absolute pity. "Chief," Sarah said softly, "please secure the cabin. I need to retrieve my boss." Sarah turned and walked past the stunned first-class passengers. She ripped open the curtain to business class, marched through, and ripped open the curtain to economy. The passengers in economy were craning their necks, trying to see what was happening. Sarah walked down the narrow aisle until she reached row 34. She stopped. There, wedged between a crying baby and a sleeping teenager, sat Adrian Banks. He was calmly holding the baby's bottle while the exhausted mother rummaged in her bag for a pacifier. "Adrian," Sarah said, her voice softening immediately. Adrian looked up. He handed the bottle back to the grateful mother and stood up. He stretched his neck, which was stiff from the cramped seat. "Hello, Sarah," Adrian said. "You made good time." "The jet was fueled," she replied. "Are you all right?" "I've been better," Adrian said, stepping into the aisle. He brushed some lint off his hoodie. "The board is in a panic," Sarah reported. "The stock just dipped 2% because of the ground stop rumor. They want to know what's happening." "Let's go tell them," Adrian said. He began to walk forward. Sarah fell in step behind him. As he walked back through the plane, the hush was absolute. Passengers who had ignored him or annoyed him earlier now stared. There was an aura around him now, a shift in gravity. He walked through business class. He walked through the curtain into first class. Preston Gentry was still arguing with the police chief. "I'm telling you, I'm the victim here. That thug, probably." Preston stopped. Adrian Banks stood at the front of the cabin. He didn't look like a thug anymore. He stood with the posture of a man who owned the very ground they were standing on. "Mr. Gentry," Adrian said. His voice was calm, but it carried to the back of the plane. "You seem to be enjoying my seat." "Your seat," Preston spat. "I told you possession is 9/10 of the law." Adrian turned to Tiffany. She was shaking now, clutching a manifest against her chest, as if it could protect her. "Tiffany," Adrian said gently, "do you have the passenger list tablet?" Yes," she whispered. "Scroll down to the bottom," Adrian instructed. "Past the passenger names. Look at the section marked Ownership and Liability. Read the name of the holding company that just acquired the majority stake in Vista Air as of... Let's see." Adrian checked his watch. 4 minutes ago, when the London markets opened. Tiffany's trembling fingers tapped the screen. She scrolled. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth fell open. She looked at the screen. Then she looked at the hoodie. Then back at the screen. "Read it," Adrian commanded. "Nexus Logistics," Tiffany whispered. "And who is the CEO of Nexus Logistics?" Adrian asked. Tiffany felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at the passport data on her screen again. Adrian Banks. "You," she breathed. "You're the owner." "Not just the owner," Adrian corrected. I'm the man you just kicked to the back of the plane because I didn't fit the profile. Adrian turned to Preston. The arrogant mogul was frozen, his mouth half open, the champagne stain on his pants, suddenly looking very foolish. "And you," Adrian said to Preston, "you're sitting in my chair." Adrian turned to the police chief. "Chief O'Malley, I'd like to press charges against Mr. Gentry for verbal assault and disturbing the peace of a flight crew, specifically me. And I'd like him removed from my plane, immediately." The silence in the first-class cabin was so profound you could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning and the frantic beating of Tiffany's heart. Preston Gentry stared at Adrian Banks. His brain was desperately trying to reconfigure the reality he was living in. This man in the hoodie, the one he had mocked, the one he had assumed was a nobody, was the new owner of the airline. It was impossible. It was absurd. "This is a joke," Preston sputtered, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a cough. He looked around at the other passengers, seeking allies. "You all see this, right? It's a prank, a hidden camera show." He pointed a shaking finger at Adrian. "How much did you pay them to say that you're nobody?" Adrian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply looked at Sarah. "Show him." Sarah stepped forward and held up her tablet. On the screen was a live press release from the London Stock Exchange, time-stamped 5 minutes ago. Breaking news. Nexus Logistics completes hostile takeover of Vista Air. CEO Adrian Banks. Vows. Total overhaul of toxic corporate culture. Preston squinted at the screen. The color drained from his face until he looked like a wax figure melting under heat. "Chief," Adrian said, his voice bored. "Mr. Gentry is trespassing on private property. He is occupying a seat that does not belong to him on an aircraft he does not own, disrupting a flight schedule that costs $5,000 a minute to maintain. Please remove him." Chief O'Malley, who had dealt with Preston's drunken tirades at the airport bar before and had zero patience for entitled frequent flyers, stepped forward. He unclipped the retention strap on his holster, not to draw his weapon, but to signal intent. "Mr. Gentry," O'Malley said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Grab your bag. We're leaving." "You can't do this," Preston shrieked, clutching the armrests of seat 1A, like a child refusing to leave a roller coaster. "Do you know who my father is?" "I am a platinum member. I have rights." "You have the right to remain silent," O'Malley said, grabbing Preston by the arm. Preston flailed. "Get your hands off me. This is assault, Tiffany. Tell them I'm the victim here." Tiffany shrank back against the galley wall, terrified. She couldn't speak. She knew that if she opened her mouth, she would only dig her grave deeper. She watched in horror as the man she had fawned over was hoisted out of the seat. "I'm not walking," Preston yelled, going limp in a classic act of passive resistance. "Fine by me," O'Malley grunted. He nodded to the 2 large TSA officers behind him. "Boys, assist the gentleman." The 2 officers moved in with efficient brutality. One grabbed Preston's left arm, the other his right. They hauled him out of the seat, his expensive Italian loafers dragging on the carpet. "Oh, my suit. You're ruining my suit," Preston screamed. "You ruined it yourself with the champagne," Adrian noted dryly as Preston was dragged past him. As they hauled Preston down the aisle, the paralysis of the other passengers broke. Smartphones appeared from everywhere. The elderly couple in row 2, the businessman in 3A, and even the people peering through the curtain from business class were all recording. "Smile, Preston," Adrian called out. "You're finally going to be famous." Preston screamed obscenities as he was dragged through the cabin door and onto the jet bridge. His Louis Vuitton dog carrier was unceremoniously shoved into the arms of his terrified personal assistant, who scuttled after him head bowed in shame. The cabin door didn't close. The show wasn't over. Adrian turned his attention to the crew. The flight attendants were huddled in the galley. Tiffany was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. The captain, Richard Davis, had emerged from the cockpit to see what was happening. He looked at Adrian, then at Sarah, then at the terrified Tiffany. "Mr. Banks," Captain Davis said, trying to salvage some dignity. "I apologize for the confusion. We were following standard protocol regarding VIP priority." "Standard protocol," Adrian repeated. He walked over to the bulkhead wall where the airline's mission statement was framed in gold plastic. Service, respect, excellence. Adrian ripped the frame off the wall and dropped it into the trash bin. "Sarah," Adrian said, "what is the severance package for a flight attendant terminated for cause 0? Sarah replied instantly. "Termination for discriminatory conduct negates all pension and severance benefits under the new Nexus contracts." Tiffany let out a sob. "Mr. Banks, please. I didn't know. I was just trying to keep the peace. Mr. Gentry he's difficult. I was scared." Adrian stepped closer to her. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, which was somehow worse. "You weren't scared, Tiffany," Adrian said softly. "You were convenient. You saw a black man in a hoodie and a white man in a suit, and you made a calculation. You decided my dignity was the price you were willing to pay for a quiet flight." I can change," she wept. "I'll do better. Please, I need this job. My rent, my car." "You can't work here anymore," Adrian said firmly. "But I'm not going to fire you. Not yet." Tiffany looked up, hope flickering in her tear-filled eyes. "You're not?" "No," Adrian said, "because firing you now would just make you a victim in your own mind. You'd go home and tell your friends you were fired by the new woke boss. You wouldn't learn a thing." He turned to the captain. "Captain Davis, is the plane fueled?" "Yes, sir." "Good," Adrian said. "We're going to London, but there are going to be some changes to the staffing assignments." Adrian pointed to the economy curtain. "Tiffany, give your first-class apron to the junior attendant in economy. You are working the rear galley for the remainder of this flight." Tiffany gasped. "But I'm the purser. I'm the lead attendant." "Not today," Adrian said. "Today you're serving row 45. The toilets back there haven't been serviced since Chicago, and I hear they're backing up. You're going to clean them. You're going to serve the people you look down on, and you're going to do it with a smile." He looked at her with steel in his eyes. "And if one passenger, just one, complains about your attitude by the time we land in Heathrow, then you're fired. Do you understand?" "Yes," Tiffany whispered, her face burning with humiliation. "Go," Adrian commanded. She scrambled to unpin her gold wings, handing them to a stunned junior attendant named Jessica, who had just come up from the back. Tiffany walked the walk of shame through business past the people, whispering and pointing all the way to the back of the bus. Adrian turned to Jessica, the young attendant, who looked like she was about to faint. She was black, with her hair in a neat bun, and she had been working the economy beverage cart for 3 years without a promotion. "What's your name?" Adrian asked. "Jessica, sir," she stammered. "Jessica, have you ever worked first class?" "No, sir. I've applied 3 times, but Gary at the desk said I didn't have the right look." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Well, Jessica, you have the look now. You're the lead purser for this flight. Take care of the cabin." Jessica beamed, standing straighter than she ever had in her life. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Adrian finally turned back to seat 1A. The seat was empty. The champagne stain was still there. He didn't sit in it. He looked at the elderly couple in row 2. They were holding hands, looking at him with awe. "Excuse me," Adrian said to them. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller." The old man said, his voice trembling. "We're the Millers." "Mr. and Mrs. Miller," Adrian said warmly. "That looks like a tight fit in those seats. Would you do me a favor? Would you mind taking suite 1A and 1B? It's much more comfortable, and I'd hate for that empty seat to go to waste." The old woman gasped. "Oh no, we couldn't." "That's your seat, Mr. Banks." "I insist," Adrian said. "Besides, I have some work to do, and I prefer a quieter spot." With Jessica's help, the stunned couple was moved into the massive suites. They looked like royalty. "Where will you sit, sir?" Sarah asked Adrian quietly. Adrian looked back toward economy. "I'm going back to 34E, Adrian said. "I was having a nice conversation with a mother and her baby, and I promised to help her with her bags in London." Sarah smiled. She knew this move. It wasn't just humility. It was a power play. It showed every employee on that plane that the boss was watching from everywhere. "I'll stay here and handle the paperwork," Sarah said. Adrian walked back to economy. As he entered the cabin, the passengers who had heard the rumors, rippling back like a wave, went silent. Then someone started clapping. It wasn't a loud cheer. It was a slow, respectful applause. Adrian sat down in 34E. The young mother looked at him, eyes wide. "I heard," she whispered. "Is it true you own the plane?" Adrian buckled his seatbelt and picked up the baby's fallen rattle. "Technically," Adrian smiled, "but right now I'm just the guy in the middle seat. Let's get this kid to sleep." The plane taxied out. This time, no alarms went off. This time, the takeoff was smooth. But while the flight was peaceful, the storm on the ground was just beginning. Preston Gentry was in a holding cell, and a video titled "Billionaire Gets Dragged Off Plane by Unexpected Owner" was currently trending #1 on Twitter. And Adrian Banks had 7 hours to plan exactly what he was going to do to Gary the gate agent when he returned. While Flight 802 cruised at 35,000 feet over the dark, icy waters of the Atlantic, the world below was waking up to a digital firestorm. The video recorded by the businessman in seat 3A had hit TikTok first. It was a shaky vertical clip, but the audio was crystal clear. It captured everything. Preston Gentry's screeching entitlement, the arrival of the police, and that cinematic moment when Adrian Banks, clad in a $20 hoodie, revealed he owned the airline. Within 2 hours, the clip had 12 million views. The hashtag #HoodieCEO was trending worldwide, sandwiched between #Justice for Seat 1A and Karma Air. Back at JFK Terminal 4, the atmosphere at the Vista Air check-in desk was grim. Gary, the gate agent who had sneered at Adrian earlier that afternoon, was currently dealing with a family of 5 who had lost their boarding passes. "I told you." Gary sighed, rolling his eyes. "If you don't have the QR code, I can't help you." "Next." His phone buzzed in his pocket. Then it buzzed again, and again, a continuous vibration against his thigh. Annoyed, Gary pulled it out under the counter. He had 42 missed texts. Most were from co-workers. One was from his mom. "Gary, is that you in the background of this video?" Gary frowned. He opened the link his mother had sent. He watched the video. He saw Preston Gentry being dragged away. He saw Adrian Banks standing in the aisle. Gary felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He recognized the hoodie. He recognized the face. The memory of his own voice echoed in his head. "Economy check-in is around the corner. Try to look presentable." "Oh, God," Gary whispered. He scrolled down to the comments. "At Fly High 99. Wait, I know that check-in desk. That's Gary. He's the worst agent at JFK. He made me cry last Christmas because my bag was one hellswolb overweight. At Travel Pro. I recognize him too. He's the one who denied the CEO check-in at the start of the video. Look at the background timestamp. Gary is toast. At Nexus Fan. The CEO just bought the airline. Gary better start updating his resume to Professional Burger Flipper. Gary dropped the phone. It clattered onto the marble floor. "Sir," the father of the family asked, "are you okay? You look like you're having a stroke." Gary didn't answer. He simply turned around, walked away from the podium, went into the break room, and locked the door. He knew with absolute certainty that his employee badge would stop working before the sun came up. Meanwhile, inside the holding cell of the Port Authority Police Department, Preston Gentry was not learning his lesson. He had been allowed one phone call. He didn't call his mother. He called his lawyer a shark named Sterling Vance, a name he hated, but the man was effective. "I want to sue them all, Vance," Preston screamed into the receiver, pacing the small concrete cell. "I want to sue the airline for breach of contract. I want to sue the police for excessive force. And I want to sue that hoodie-wearing fraud for defamation of character. He humiliated me." "Preston, shut up and listen," Vance's voice crackled on the other end. "I've seen the video. Everyone has seen the video. You're not the victim here. You look like a maniac." "I was provoked," Preston insisted. "He baited me. He sat in that seat on purpose to entrap me. It's a conspiracy. It doesn't matter." Vance sighed. "The court of public opinion has already ruled. Nexus Logistics stock is up 4% since the video dropped. People love this guy. He's the undercover boss, but real. If we sue, we look petty. My advice issue, a public apology, donate to a charity, and go to rehab for exhaustion." "Rehab?" Preston roared, kicking the metal bench. "I'm not going to rehab. I'm going to war. Get me out of here. I'm booking the next flight to London. I'm going to crash his press conference. If he wants a show, I'll give him a show." There was a long silence on the line. "Preston," Vance said coldly, "if you go to London to harass Adrian Banks, I will drop you as a client. The man is worth $40 billion. He just bought an airline to prove a point. Do you really want to find out what he buys next? Maybe he buys your bank. Maybe he buys your apartment building." Preston froze. The thought hadn't occurred to him. Money was his only superpower, and for the first time in his life, he was up against someone with more of it. "Fine," Preston hissed. "Get me out, but I'm not apologizing." High above the ocean, the reality of the new management was settling in for Tiffany. She was currently in the rear galley of the Boeing 777, wrestling with a beverage cart that had a broken wheel. The smell of the lavatory near row 45 was pungent, a mix of harsh chemical cleaner and human biology. "Excuse me, miss," a passenger in 42C called out. He was a large man wearing a tank top. "I ordered a Diet Coke 20 minutes ago. What's the hold-up?" "I'm coming as fast as I can, sir," Tiffany said, wiping sweat from her brow. Her flawless makeup was smudged. Her feet, encased in heels designed for the plush carpets of first class, were throbbing in agony on the hard linoleum of economy. "Well, hurry it up," the man grumbled. "Service on this airline has really gone downhill." Tiffany gritted her teeth. She reached for a can of soda, her hand shaking. In first class, she poured vintage Dom Perignon into crystal flutes. Here she was, cracking open lukewarm cans and handing out pretzels. She looked down the long, endless aisle of heads. It was a sea of humanity. Babies crying, people sleeping with their mouths open, teenagers playing loud games. And then she saw him. In row 34, amidst the chaos, sat Adrian Banks. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked helpful. He was holding a sleeping baby while the mother Maria ate her meal tray. The baby was drooling slightly on his expensive-looking hoodie, which Tiffany now realized was probably custom-made cashmere, not cotton. Adrian was eating a dry bread roll with his free hand, reading something on his laptop screen. Tiffany felt a lump in her throat. She had judged him. She had treated him like garbage because he didn't fit her narrow definition of worthy. And now he was doing her job better than she was. He was actually caring for the passengers. She pushed the cart forward, stopping at row 34. "Mr. Banks," she whispered, Do you need anything? A water, a coffee?" Adrian looked up. His eyes were tired but kind. He didn't look at her with vengeance. He looked at her with pity. "I'm fine, Tiffany," he said quietly, so as not to wake the baby. "But Mrs. Maria here could use another apple juice, and maybe bring some extra napkins for the little one." "Right away," Tiffany said. She poured the juice with trembling hands. She placed it gently on the tray table. "Thank you," Maria whispered, smiling at Tiffany. "He's such a helper, your boss." "Yes," Tiffany said, her voice cracking. "He is." "How are the feet?" Adrian asked, suddenly glancing at her shoes. Tiffany blinked. "Excuse me." "The heels," Adrian said. "They're not meant for the economy sprint. You've been on your feet for 4 hours. They hurt," she admitted, tears pricking her eyes again. Adrian reached into his duffel bag under the seat. He pulled out a pair of thick grey wool socks. They were brand new, still in the packaging. "I picked these up at the airport gift shop," he said. "Put them on. You can't serve people if you're in pain." Tiffany stared at the socks. It was a small gesture, but it broke her. The man she had tried to kick off the plane was offering her comfort. "Thank you," she choked out. She took the socks and fled to the galley to hide her tears. In seat 34E, Adrian watched her go. He wasn't trying to be a saint. He was testing her. He wanted to see if she could be broken down and rebuilt. If she had sneered at the socks, he would have fired her in London. But she took them. There was hope for her yet. He turned back to his laptop. He was drafting an email that would go out to all 45,000 employees of Vista Air the moment they touched down. Subject: a new era. To the team. Today I flew with you. I saw the best of you, and I saw the worst of you. We have lost our way. We have started valuing wallets over people. That ends today. Effective immediately, the priority profile system is abolished. We treat every passenger in seat 45F with the same respect as the passenger in 1A, because the grandmother visiting her grandkids is just as important as the CEO closing a deal. Change is coming. It will be uncomfortable, but it will be worth it. See you on the ground. Adrian Banks. He hit save draft. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. The weather is rainy and 12 degrees Celsius. We expect to be on the ground in 30 minutes. Adrian felt the plane dip. The engine pitch changed. Maria woke up and took her baby back. "Thank you for holding him," she said. "You're very good with kids. Do you have any of your own?" Adrian's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A shadow passed over his face, a hint of a past pain that the cameras hadn't captured. "Not yet," Adrian said softly. "Someday." He looked out the window at the lights of London appearing through the clouds. He was ready for the board meeting. He was ready for the press. But he wasn't ready for what was waiting for him at the arrival gate. Because while Adrian had been dealing with Preston Gentry and the airline staff, a different kind of trouble had been tracking his flight. A trouble from his past that he thought he had buried years ago. And she was waiting at Heathrow with a subpoena in one hand and a secret in the other. The Boeing 777 touched down on the wet tarmac of London Heathrow. Inside the cabin buzzed. The passengers knew they had witnessed history. Adrian Banks stood up from seat 34E, stretching his stiff back. Beside him, Maria hesitated with her baby. "Do we have to wait for first class? Not today." Adrian smiled. He grabbed her heavy diaper bag and carry-on. "Lead the way." They walked down the aisle. At the rear galley, Tiffany stood waiting. She wasn't wearing her heels anymore. She was wearing the thick grey wool socks Adrian had given her. She looked exhausted, her hair fraying but far more human than the Ice Queen who had greeted him in New York. She braced herself, expecting to be fired. "The lavatories are clean, sir," she reported, her voice trembling. Adrian looked at her feet. "Keep the socks and take the next 3 days off. You're on paid leave." Tiffany blinked, confused. "Sir." "Use the time to think," Adrian said firmly. "If you come back as the person I met in the terminal, don't bother returning. But if you come back as the person who served this cabin today, you have a future here." Tiffany nodded, tears spilling over. "Thank you, sir." Adrian walked on, passing through the quiet luxury of first class. The Millers, the elderly couple he had upgraded, waved enthusiastically from Suite 1A. "Best flight of our lives, Mr. Banks." Adrian stepped onto the cold jet bridge. Sarah was waiting for him, holding a secure tablet. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was a woman carved from ice, wearing a trench coat and holding a thick manila envelope. "Harper." Adrian nodded, recognizing the NCA special agent from his past. "I didn't know the National Crime Agency did greeter duty." "I'm not here for you, Banks," Harper said, her tone crisp. "I'm here for the man who was supposed to be in seat 1A, Preston Gentry." "You're late," Adrian said. "NYPD picked him up for trespassing." "He wasn't fighting for that seat because of his ego." "Adrian," Harper said, stepping closer. "He was fighting because he was terrified." She handed him the envelope. "Gentry has been under surveillance for months. We suspected he was using his platinum legacy status to bypass cargo screenings." Adrian opened the folder. It contained surveillance photos of Gentry clutching his Louis Vuitton bag. The dog carrier, Adrian realized aloud. He wouldn't let the assistant touch it. He screamed about needing the legroom. "There was no dog," Harper confirmed grimly. "We have intel he was carrying £5 million worth of conflict diamonds. That's why he refused to check it. That's why he needed the bulkhead suite to keep it directly under his legs." Adrian let out a low whistle. The irony was staggering. Preston hadn't just been an entitled brat. He was a panicked smuggler. By moving him, Adrian hadn't just hurt his feelings. He had separated a criminal from his contraband. "NYPD just secured the bag," Harper said, tapping her earpiece. Confirmed. Uncut diamonds. By kicking him off the plane, you accidentally stopped a transnational smuggling ring. I prefer strategic intervention, Adrian smirked. He turned to Sarah. Trigger the clawback clause on Gentry's shares. If he's convicted of a felony using our aircraft, we can void his legacy status and liquidate his holdings. He'll be bankrupt by morning, Sarah promised, tapping her screen. Adrian walked out into the arrivals hall. The flash of cameras was blinding. Dozens of reporters shouted his name. Adrian stepped up to the podium, his face calm. Today, he began, his voice echoing, we saw a man who thought his bank account gave him the right to treat people like furniture. He thought the rules didn't apply to him. He looked directly into the lens. But I have news for Mr. Gentry. The rules do apply. As of today, Vista Air is under new management. We are no longer an airline for the elite. We are an airline for the people. And as for Mr. Gentry, I hope he enjoys his new seat. I hear the cells in Rikers Island have very little leg room. The video of the NYPD opening Preston's dog carrier to find the diamonds broke the internet. Preston Gentry faced 20 years in federal prison, his reputation incinerated, and his fortune liquidated by Adrian's clawback clause. Gary the gate agent was fired for cause. He was last seen working a frantic rental car counter, forced to smile at every customer. Tiffany returned to work after her leave. She wore comfortable shoes and stopped judging passengers by their clothes. She became one of the fleet's best pursers, known for her kindness. And Adrian Banks. On his return flight to New York, the new gate agent saw his passport and tried to usher him to the front. Mr. Banks, we have the suite ready. Adrian shook his head, slinging his worn duffel bag over his shoulder. No, thank you, he said, pulling up his hoodie. I'm in 34E. I have a movie to finish. He walked down the jet bridge, the owner of the sky, sitting among the people. And that is how a single moment of arrogance cost a billionaire his freedom and gave an airline a new heart. It just goes to show that you never know who you're talking to, and kindness is the only currency that really matters. Adrian Banks proved that true power isn't about sitting in the front row, it's about standing up for the people in the back. What would you have done if you were Adrian? Would you have fired the staff or given them a second chance like he did? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please blast that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. We post new dramas every single day. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind or be humble.